from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shavagauri Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you Mataji for joining and giving your session. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves before we start the class?
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to Guru Maharaj. This is Satya Radha Devidasi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Satvi Radha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you Mataji for joining and giving your session. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna,
Hare
is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves?
Hare Krishna Mataji and all devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Lakshmi from Florida. Jai Sachinandana. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Lakshmi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you Mataji for joining and giving your session. Hare Krishna. Okay, Mataji, we can start the class. Hare Krishna, I welcome everybody to Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Keshavanand Prabhuji to enlighten us on topic Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 28th chapter, 13th verse. Before Prabhuji comes on the call, Mataji is going to read the verse for us. Hare Krishna, Shamagori Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Please take over the call for reading the verse, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Reading from Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28, text number 13. Yamanoparuddhayan tanograstayam kalakanyaya puryam prajvara samsrishta purapalon vatapyata. Mataji, can you share the screen for the verse?
Sure, Mataji.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: the city's commandant of police serpent heard that the citizens were being attacked by Kalakanya, and he became very aggrieved to see his own residence set ablaze after being attacked by the Yavanas. Purport: the living entity is covered. The living entity is covered by two different types of bodies, the gross body and the subtle body. At death, we can see that the gross body is finished, but actually the living entity is carried by the subtle body to another gross body. The so-called scientists of the modern age cannot see how the subtle body is working in carrying the soul from one body to another. This subtle body has been figuratively described as a serpent or the city's police superintendent. When there is fire everywhere, the police superintendent cannot escape either. When there is security and an absence of fire in the city, the police superintendent can impose his authority upon the citizens. But when there is an all-out attack on the city, he is rendered useless. As the life air was ready to leave the gross body, the subtle body also began the experience pain. Next word. Sheke somitu tatra puru krishchorve pathu gantu mescha tato vriksha kotaradi vasa nalat. As a translation, as a serpent living within the cavity of a tree wishes to live when there is a forest fire, to the city's police superintendent, the snake wished to leave the city due to the fire's severe heat. Purport: it becomes very difficult for snakes to leave a forest when there is a fire. Other animals may flee due to their long legs, but serpents, only being able to crawl, are generally burnt in the fire. At the last stage, the limbs of the body are not as much affected as the life air. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, you can take over now.
Okay, let's see.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, what's happening? Okay, can you hear my voice?
Yes,
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. Where is camera? Camera is here. Okay, so we are discussing this third canto. And what's this chapter? Third canto?
Chapter 20 is the fourth canto, chapter 28.
Oh, yeah. Fourth canto, chapter 28, text 13
13
and
and
40. 40.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, let me just offer and then we'll start. Om Jnanatim Tasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmaya Shri. So this is yeah, we are talking about Puranjan, and Puranjan seems to be a useless person as far as descriptions are there. I mean to say completely materialistic and attached person. That's why his name is Puranjan. Puranjan means Puran means old. He's a it's referring to the soul condition to the body. So, well, here in these two verses, what's happening is death has arrived. So death, finally, Puranjan enjoyed with the queens and as normal people do with their wife, children. He just led a normal materialistic life, so-called normal. I mean to say, according to Bhagavatam standard, that's quite abnormal. But he thought it's normal, and now it's time to die. And what's happening is Yavano Uparodhyat Ayatano Grastayam Kalakanyaya. This female called as the daughter of time, Kal Kanyaya, which is death. She visited the city of Puranjan, and the whole city was on fire. Now this is an allegory. This whole story is allegory. We know, we understand it's allegory, and the point which they are trying to tell, Devarshi Narada is trying to tell the point to the king that you see the point there that when this body is at the time of death, this body is almost like on fire, uh, the fire of uh, the fire in the sense that this body uh, there is there's a lot of pain in the body. That's the whole point. Uh, the person who is dying, he's losing his breath. It's a very painful. It's not just a painful situation. It's a very fearful situation. When a city is on fire, it's painful. It's also fearful because you can't do anything. You're trapped. to die, and you have to burn. You will be burned alive. That's the whole point there. At the time of death, you are experiencing pain, which is Bhagavatam says equal to 30,000 scorpions. That is death, and who doesn't fear death except liberated souls? Even liberated souls also fear death. Even liberated souls also fear death. They why do they fear death? But the fear is different. They fear death because they know that at the time of death they can forget Krishna. Kula Shekhar, famous prayers. He prays to Krishna, Smaranam kutaste kantavrodhau. When the time of death comes, my my voice will be choked. I will not be able to speak. Hare Krishna. So let me die now, because now I am remembering the lotus feet. Remembrance is very strong. See, so we see even liberated souls fear death. Because who knows? Who knows? Nobody can guarantee what will happen at that time. Even if you are perfectly prepared, nobody can guarantee. So that is why Krishna says to Uddhava that every person who wants to advance in spiritual life, they should remember two things. One is God, one is death. Anybody who forgets death, he will not advance properly towards God. He'll become lazy, inattentive. And that's where Bhagavatam began. Parikshit had 7 days. He was cursed to die. And at that time, he had a question, what to do now? And then he heard Bhagavatam. It was death which made Parikshit to hear Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami 24/7. He was hearing without sleeping, without eating. It was death. So death is a good thing or a bad thing? That's the big question. Uh, it's for devotees, death is both good and bad both. For non-devotees, it's really bad and scary. Death. He wants to die. For devotees, it's both. Uh, in the sense, for conditioned devotee, for conditioned person, for devotee who is still advancing, death is not really good, because if you die now, I mean to say, if we die now, what's going to happen? Definitely, we're not going back to Godhead, because we have not perfected our life. So, but then, just a minute. Yeah. But then for liberated souls, death is good. Death is their friend, because death, after dying, they are going back to spiritual world. That is why many philosophers and many saints, they said, death is your guest. Invite her, because when you die and when you go down within the ground, then you rise up in the spiritual world. So don't weep when you die. Don't fear when you die, because that is a time when you can get perfectly liberated from all the mortal bondage. So, in that sense, death is a good thing. But even for conditioned soul, it's good, because death is anukul for devotion. It helps us to remember God, Krishna, every day, every second. That's why Krishna says, remember death. There are many traditions in Islam. In Hinduism also, Aghori, Panthas, Tantric, in Islam also Sufis, they like to live in in crematory, where people are burned and buried at this cremation ground. They live there. Why? So that they're constantly remembered about death, and then they don't become lax in the sadhana, and they don't just lose their track in devotional life. So that's that's in many traditions. We generally forget death. Most of us, we we don't even forget death. We don't like to think about death. Am I right? Generally, spiritual people, they talk about life, they talk about uh, they talk about eternity, they talk about uh, divinity. Nobody talks about death. Have you heard about? Have you had? Have you heard any lecture where people are talking about death? Nobody. So, uh, but but uh, but true saints, they talk about death. Srila Prabhupada. If you read Srila Prabhupada books, they talk about death. They're talking about death. In every page of Srimad Bhagavatam, in a small books, Prabhupada says, "Perfect your life before death. Perfect your life." Prabhupada is always reminding us about death. That's a mark of a true saint, especially in our preaching also. We always preach, uh, like preaching in the Western world, life and goodness, and that's all. That's okay, but that's not really our philosophy, or that's not what Krishna wants us to tell people. So what's happening in Narad Muni? So Devarshi Narad, what he's telling to Prajin Bhai. Devarshi Narad is not giving a very glorious picture of Puranjan. He's not saying that so he's not saying there was a king Puranjan, he enjoyed and he was nice, he was good. Well, he said he was totally attached and now it's time to die, and he's grieving, he's in pain, he's in a problem, big problem. So uh, Devarshinad gives a very nice example. He says the whole city is on fire. He gives example. The whole city is on fire. When the whole city is on fire, the police, the superintendent police, they even cannot protect you. They can't protect you. This is 13th and 14th verse also. Same thing. Same thing. Police or a serpent. Two examples are given. And this police serpent. So what about police example is given that if the whole city is on fire, what police can do? Police can help you if there is a problem within the city. The whole city is on fire. Even police will run away to save themselves. What they can do? They can't do anything. Because when the whole city is on fire, it's a big problem. I mean to say, whole Rome. It's recorded in history. Entire city of Rome was burned to ashes. Nobody could do anything. People just were seeing what's happening. That's all. So, who is this police superintendent city? This is the subtle body. And what is the city? The city is the gross. And when the gross body is dying, the subtle body or the police, it 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 just runs away. That's all. So when the gross body is finished, Narad is explaining the subtle body. It sees that this gross body is going to get finished. So the subtle body takes the soul and leaves. That's all. Because of this machine, this is a machine. This machine is no longer useful. No longer useful to for you can't use it. It gets burned up. It dies. It's over. It's finished. It's wrecked. It's shipwrecked. So what do? The passenger leaves. The subtle body takes the soul and leaves. It departs. Or another example is given of serpent. The subtle body means mind, intelligence, ego. That's compared to snake. So when there is a fire in the city or the forest, all the animals, all the humans, the birds especially, they fly. The birds have no problem. Srila Prabhupada said in one of his lectures that these birds have so much advantage. Uh, so if there's a fire, if there's a flood, the birds have a good security system. They just fly off. Prabhupada says there's a pat, and they fly off. That's all. So Prabhupada says Krishna had given um, security to bird. Simply, it's in the sky. Nothing can happen to her. Whatever happens down, she's flying in the sky happily. So Srila Prabhupada says, if Krishna can give such a good security system to the bird, you can imagine how much he can give to us. Krishna has already made arrangement to make everybody secure. The whole point is whether we are using that system or not. Krishna is saying, if you want to become secure, do my devotion. Understand you're not this body. Because until unless we think we are this body, until unless Puranjan is attached to the city, he will get grief and unhappiness and fear specifically. And that is, you see the point as a devotee. I mean to say now most of you who are hearing, they might be in 40s or approaching 50s. That's all I mean to say. That that's what I can guess. But when he becomes 60s, 70s, then that fear of death comes, because then the time comes to lose this body, and if by that time you're not detached from this body, then it's very difficult to do chanting and bhajan. I have seen many senior devotees who have left chanting, many Prabhupada disciples, so who are not chanting properly. So when I asked them what happened, they said, well, we are old and the fear of death, what to do with that, and disease. The body is not allowing to chant. So that is Devarshi Narad saying here, the snakes cannot run away from the city. They are burned. So similarly, when the gross body is dying, the subtle body starts suffering. It cannot leave immediately. The subtle body cannot leave immediately. The subtle body suffers pain, sorrow, because the gross body cannot experience anything. Gross body is matter. Your hand cannot experience. The experience goes from this hand to your brain and then to your mind. The mind experiences. The mind also doesn't experience basically. God experience soul experiences. So, but through the mind, that's the point there. So the subtle body experiences pain and a lot of fear, and the soul suffers. And the soul suffers. Soul is burnt alive. Let's say, you can imagine if you're burnt alive. Previously, Greeks used to give this Christians. They so they used to give this punishment to people who were heretics. Heretics means who were not according to the philosophy of Christianity. The punishment was they were burnt alive on stake. So all these people were tied to a bamboo and then burned alive. You can imagine how painful it would be. In Japan, when these Christian missionaries went to preach, the so what the Japanese used to do, they didn't want Christianity to come in their land, so they used to arrest all these Christians, and they used to tie them with ropes, and they used to stack them one over another like log of woods, and they used to put fire beneath, and all of them burned like log of woods alive. You can imagine that kind of pain multiplied 1,000 times. That's the pain of death. Can you remember God at that time? Just imagine. Uh, so we can't even remember God when we are in fever. That kind of burning fever we can't remember. What to talk of death? So, uh, so, so that's a point there. Um, that's a point. This we have to prepare ourselves properly. And what's the preparation? What kind of preparation will do? You might say, okay, we are chanting, we are doing programs, this Zoom program, we are taking association. That's very good, but what kind of preparation we have to do? You see the whole kind of preparation, the definition of sadhana bhakti is kriti sadhe bhavet sadhe bhava sa sadhana. That is a definition of devotion. So, or sadhana, by the way. Kriti sadhe bhavet sadhe bhava. The sadhana is defined when you follow certain rules and regulations, uh, So, so when you follow certain rules and regulations, kriti sadhe. Kriti means you're doing something, you're chanting, you're hearing, shravanam, kirtanam, prasadam, doing all these things. But for what? Sadhe bhava. Sadhe, the goal is bhav. Krishna bhavana amritsam. That's the art of devotion. We have to develop emotions for God. We have to protect our emotions, what is already developed. And we have to nourish our soul with uh, bhava, which is not yet there within the soul. So that's what we have to do. And that is a preparation, because at the time of death, you might not be able to chant Hare Krishna or direct. But I mean to say, in fact, Srila Prabhupada writes in the Prabhupada. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada writes, yeah, Srila Prabhupada, I think here, so I think in the next verse of somewhere, Prabhupada writes that but if you are sufficiently advanced, then you will remember Krishna. But you'll not be able to chant Hare Krishna properly. At least by your tongue, you can chant in your mind if you are sufficiently practiced. And then you can remember Krishna. But at that time, who will be able to chant Hare Krishna? At that time, the dynamics will be just the reverse. Now we are chanting Hare Krishna to develop emotions for God. At that time, emotions will inspire us to chant Hare Krishna. Or in the language of Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written a song in Sharanagati, last song. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, Harinam Hare Katobal. What kind of power holy name has, that it enters my ears, Karna Randhra Pathadiya, enters my ears, Hirdi Tare Majaya, and then it goes in the heart, and then from the heart it comes in the tongue and it dances there. You see the point. Uh, for Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's not chanting and then he, for him he's not chanting and then remembering God. For him, he's remembering and then chanting is spontaneous there. So for him, smaranam is making him do kirtanam. For us, kirtanam is helping us to go to smaranam. It's just the reverse. So if we don't approach that platform where smaranam becomes so strong by doing kirtanam, that sometimes if we can't do kirtanam, we can't chant properly, then the smaranam will make us chant Hare Krishna in our mind. It will force us. Because Smaranam is born of Kirtanam. Kirtanam is a mother of Smaranam. So if the mother is lost, the child, Smaranam, it will somehow or the other bring back, call her mother back, call her or his mother back. If the child's cry is strong, if the child cries, if the child is crying, if the child is crying sufficiently loud, the mother runs. So if Smaranam is sufficiently strong, then it will automatically make you do kirtanam in your mind, and then you're perfect. So kirtana prabhave smarana hove. That kind of practice we need. So through practice, before we die, we have to develop strong emotions for God. How do we know our emotions are strong? We know our emotions are strong if our remembrance is strong. And what do you mean by strong remembrance? That Chaitanya Charitamrita Mahaprabhu says, Krishna Smaranam, when I remember Krishna, Deha Vismaranamar, I forget my body. This is how strong remembrance is. The remembrance of Krishna is so strong that you forget yourself. The remembrance of Krishna supersedes the remembrance of your own identity. You forget yourself. You forget your needs. You forget your indulgences. You forget your temptations. You forget your seductions. You forget your uh, necessities of life. You just forget everything. You enter trance. That's called trance. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was maximum time he was in trance. Later in life, after sannyas, even before sannyas, when he was dancing in Srivas Thakur's house, most of the time he was dancing and he was in trance. And in trance, he was weeping, he was falling down, he was becoming unconscious, he was rolling on ground. Sometimes he used to become like a wheel and stay in that position. Sometimes he used to, so sometimes he used to say, I'm God. Sometimes then next moment he will say, I'm a devotee. Please have mercy. So the next moment he will hold the shoulders of some devotee and he'll say, protect me. And the next moment he will climb on their shoulders and tell, just surrender to me. That's called trance. He doesn't know what he's doing. That's the whole idea. He has lost his own identity. In the sense, he has lost the conception of I and mine, the false conception of I and mine. And he's simply absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. That's a bewildering state. That kind of remembrance we require. That is strong remembrance. Where your mind is bewildered, where you become fearful of the fact that you'll forget yourself. That is a strong remembrance. You become fearful. I lose my identity. You see, so what kind of fear? So what kind of fear uh, will come in your heart when you when you uh, when you feel you are actually losing yourself? Death is the same thing. At the time of death, you are losing yourself. You're losing this body, but when you start remembering, but the remembrance of Krishna is so strong. Uh, uh, so when your bhava is very strong, or in other words, when you have love of God, then the remembrance is so strong that you lose yourself, you lose your entity. There's a journey without I. That's called journey without I, and that is a need of life. That's a necessity. That is called the need of. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that is why. Um, so that is why love is a need of life. It's not just a goal of life. It's a need, because without love, your remembrance cannot be strong. Without strong remembrance, at the time of death, you're bound to fail. It's impossible to remember God if you don't have love of God. So that's what Narad Muni is trying to convey with these two verses. He's not trying to to actually create a fearful situation for the king and tell him, see, you should always fear and this and that. He's not a fear monger. Let me like that. He's trying to tell, well, uh, this fear is good. The fear of death is good because that will help you to advance in Krishna consciousness, help you to prepare properly to die in a proper state of mind. And Krishna is giving you sufficient time. It's life, whole life. Krishna is giving you sufficient time to to advance properly. That's what Krishna is doing. So that's the whole verse. These two verses, um, basically what Narad Muni is trying to convey through this two verses, through the story of Puranjan. And uh, the whole story of Puranjan, Devarshi Narad, what's his central message? His central message is vairagya, detachment through devotion, detachment through devotion. And that's why he's explaining such a long story. I mean to say king, uh, the king to whom Narad Muni is telling the story, he knows. uh, he could have simply said, be detached from the body and do devotion, and that's all, just like I'm talking to you. But he knew that this king will not understand. He has to be told a story. He had to be told an an allegory where, and then this is going to hit him. So sometimes great saints, they also tell stories like that. But the story is not a nice fairy tale and you'll enjoy. It's to the point that things were okay, but then things got messed up, and now it's really messy, and the story is going to finish. So better take some lesson. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam, if you read 12th canto, Sukadeva Goswami He also says the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching you just two things: how to become detached from this material world and how to become attached to the lotus feet of Krishna. That's all, nothing else. And that's the central message. So Sukadeva Goswami says, don't worry about stories. I mean to say, this is a real story. But then Sukadeva Goswami says, I have told you anyway. So Devarshi Narad is saying some fictional story. But Sukadeva Goswami says, I have told you many real stories, real lifetime stories of many saints. But even don't worry about, even you should not even worry about those stories as well. What to talk about this, which is a fiction? Take the central message and go forward. How many times you're going to read in Srimad Bhagavatam, chant holy names? How many times you have to go into read in Srimad Bhagavatam, be detached to this material world? You can, so you can cram thousands of verses, but the message is the same again and again. It's the same. Serve Krishna, become attached to him, chant his holy names, become pure, leave sense gratification, go back to spiritual world. That's all finished. You don't need big books for that. But the whole point is we tend to forget this point. That is why the same point is being reminded to us in different forms, either in allegory, fictional story, or in real lifetime Puranic stories, historical events. So we have to understand the message and then go ahead. Of course, there is a purpose of these stories besides this, but that's a different thing. But the central message of these stories is attachment from this material world and attachment to Shri Krishna. Devahuti, Rishabdev, Kunti, all of them, same message, same message. So the whole point is not just to keep reading and keep hearing. The whole point is to act. And uh, so that is why there's a saying: the fools who do not apply the message of scriptures, they are simply as is with a burden of knowledge. That's all. Don't become like that. Don't become bharvahi. Take the burden of knowledge, burden of Srimad Bhagavatam, and keep on going like asses and donkeys. And don't not to apply that in life. Apply it in your life. I mean to say, so what about Vidur and Dhritarashtra? Same message. Vidur said, Dhritarashtra, you are like a dog. You are here sitting here nonsense, wasting your life. Get out of this. So so we were discussing on the Sunday program. So he said, get out. And what happened with Vidur? Srimad Bhagavatam says Vidur merged all the elements with the elements of Prakriti. He merged his mind with the universal mind. He merged his ego with universal ego, and he set his soul free. That was expected from him, and then he burned his body. So, what that means? That means he became perfectly detached from every psyche, every demand of the body. Our body demands food, our body demands sleep, our body demands rest, our body demands pleasure of touch, of seeing. We have to stop it. It's difficult, I know. I mean to say, it's not difficult. It's very, very difficult. We have to be attentive also, first of all. First point is attentive. First point is not leaving. Because Maya will make you forget everything and you will just be busy with children, with your day-to-day activity, and then suddenly you remember, oh my God, I didn't finish my rounds. That's a situation. But what I'm talking is you have to remember that, well, I don't have to do sense gratification through touch, through seeing. And when you will start subduing your demands of mind and sense gratification, and you will start become detached, the mind will revolt, and you have to tolerate it for the sake of Krishna. Krishna will feel bad. And I don't know. So I don't know about you all, but as far as I'm concerned, it's difficult. I can tell you, it's not at all easy to control senses. It's so difficult. Sometimes you are alert. Sometimes you are very alert, but then you are robbed. Suddenly your mind is robbed off, just as thieves come and they rob off your your home. Suddenly they will enter. Everything is nice. Suddenly 4 or 5 thieves come and then they just take away everything. It happens like that. Krishna says even one of the senses can lead astray even a very intelligent man. So we have to be attentive. And why we should be, and how to become attentive? Well, you have to remember that Krishna is seeing us, or Krishna will feel. How Krishna will think. Krishna will say, well, in my absence, this devotee of mine, what he's doing? A slight absence, a slight absence. He's not in temple, he's not chanting, and then he starts doing nonsense. And that's, you see, it's interesting. When gopis separate from Krishna, the remembrance increases millions of times, and Krishna relishes that. In Ras Leela, Krishna disappeared, and gopis were crying and gopi geet, and then Krishna suddenly came, and gopis said, "Where did he go?" Krishna said, "I didn't go anywhere. I was just hiding behind the trees." And Krishna said, I was seeing you all crying and wailing, and your intense devotion, that was giving me pleasure, because your devotion increased millions of times. For us, when we are separated from God, our remembrance becomes zero. When we come in association with God in form of chanting in temple with devotees, then we remember. For us, when we get separated, our remembrance goes down. Such a difference, gopis and us. That's the difference. You have to go from here to there. So when we follow the footsteps of elevated devotees, when we read about gopis, when we read about Brajvasis and elevated devotees, and when we make ourselves pure, because we must go to that platform. When we hear about them and their pure love, our soul longs for that love. And when the soul longs for that love, then you have to make yourself qualified. Simply by desiring, you don't achieve things. You can desire to touch the moon, but can you? You can't. So you have to make yourself qualified. You have to go in a spaceship to go to the moon. So, so by reading all these pastimes of Krishna with his devotees, then we start appreciating, and especially not just reading, by hearing from devotees, we develop a longing to get that pure love which is free of sense gratification. And that's the whole point. You will be able to long for that love only when you are trying to get free of sense gratification. Because if you're not trying to get free of sense gratification, that their love will look as sense gratification. Then you might say, okay, that's nice, but this movie is also nice, this is also nice, that is also nice. You'll not be able to focus your mind on that particular, only on the pastimes of Krishna, because you are seeing that love as sense gratification. So it will be almost like a cartoon. But when you understand that the pastimes of Krishna is free of sense gratification, and that only you can understand when you're making your life free of sense gratification. Only a person who has lost his dear one, only he can understand the pain of the other person who loses his dear one. A person who has not lost his beloved, he can't understand how he can understand the pain of another person who has lost his beloved, his or her beloved. So if you're not making yourself free of sense gratification, how you can understand that the dealings of Radha Krishna, they are free of sense gratification, because you don't have a sense of purity. And when you sense that that is pure love, then you long for it, and then you don't long for anything else, because everything else you see and you scan, leaving those pastimes of Krishna, they will be.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, are we able to hear him?
No, Mataji. The picture is also freezing.
Yes, Mataji, got struck.
Can you call him, Mataji?
Did he join, Mataji? No. I tried calling him and he's not answering the phone. I don't know whether he joined in the phone.
No, Mataji, he joins as a galaxy. His phone. Oh, like that. I don't see Mataji on the call. No, it's not there.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Maybe his connection is weak or something. Network.
Hare Krishna.
Yes,
Hare Krishna. Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So, sorry, I just my net was it just crashed. Okay, anyway. Where was I? I'm lost now. Where was I? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Can you tell where was I? Oh,
Uh,
I mean to say, what was that thing? When did I disconnect?
Even I missed it, Prabhu. Sorry, I don't remember exactly.
I think
So,
Prabhuji are talking about Puranje.
of course, I was talking about Puranjan.
Prabhuji was saying when we are free from sense gratification, we can understand
Okay,
Krishna
fine.
Lila.
Fine. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So I was mentioning that so when we are pure, then only we can appreciate pure love, and then we can separate pure love from pure lust. So that's here comes the importance of developing sense control. Otherwise, stopping sense gratification. Otherwise, we will never be able to appreciate pure love. And if we can't appreciate pure love, we'll never be able to long for it. We can't long for it in complete focus and in complete concentration. And if we can't long for it, then we'll not work for it to attain it. So um, and if you don't work to attain it, then you lose the battle. You forget Krishna at the time of death. So that's the whole point. So detachment from this material world, it's required. It's required to practice stopping sense gratification somehow. And then when you uh, initially also, and then when you start longing for that pure love to attain it, then you have to work on yourself. Then you have to then for the sake of attaining that pure love, to serve Lord better, uh, to serve Lord even at the time of death, then you have to really practice to stop all sense gratification, make it zero. But that time you'll be able to do, because now you're doing for Krishna. And so as I was explaining, so just like Krishna was very happy by seeing gopis hiding behind the trees, and their devotion increased. Similarly, he is there in Golok, and he will become so happy if in his absence we can we can make our efforts double, make ourselves pure, and then make ourselves qualified to enter the pastimes of God before death comes. And that's the central message of of uh, of Devarshi Narad here. Central message of Devarshi Narad in these two verses uh, about death, detachment, and attachment to lotus feet of Krishna. That's the whole picture Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to give us. It is straightforward, it is clear, but now we have to apply in our lives, be attentive, slowly and steadily. We have to work on ourselves, because our cases are not, I mean to say, eternally there. Our our case our case history is not good. Let me put it like that. And uh, our health of the soul is really bad. And if we try to do things very fast and very strongly, we might break. So Krishna says, Shanai Shanai Uparamayat. Slowly, not slowly, I mean to say, gradually try to elevate yourself. Uh, Play it intelligently under the guidance of devotees, and and start start cultivating your your feelings for God. Start longing for that pure spiritual plane. Start longing, hoping to leave this plane of selfishness, enviousness, and detachment. Start longing for the day where you will become detached of this matter, this dead matter. Srimad Bhagavatam says, saints have no value for this body, except that this body is useful to to cultivate spiritual life. Otherwise, saints have absolute no value for this flesh. You don't give any value. So they don't really worry about this flesh. What they worry is use it to cultivate spirituality and go back and throw it up. That's all. Or burn it to ashes. That's the whole idea. Parikshit was not at all fearful that his body will be burned to ashes. See, it's such a drastic change. Modern civilization is completely focused on body, and we have been trained like that from childhood. So it's so difficult to get above even our bodily platform. It's so difficult for us, which was not so difficult. And I don't say easy, but which was not so difficult in olden days, where the whole training was not just based on bodily consciousness. And that is Bhagavatam again and again. Narad Muni is reminding us through Puranjan. So even if we don't understand this story, even if we don't understand entire Bhagavatam, understand the central message. That's what Sukadeva Goswami is saying in 12th canto. But even if you understand entire Bhagavatam, and if you don't understand the central message of detachment and then attachment to God, then you lose the whole message. You waste your time, and there's no use of reading Bhagavatam or hearing lectures. It doesn't matter. So it's my request, please apply this knowledge. We have got all these stories are from different angles coming to the same point. And if we can grasp that central point, saram udahritam, that essence, and put it in a life, that's the whole point. Uh, yeah, so it is said Bhagavat and Bhagavat. Become a Bhagavat. Yeah, you should not just read this book, live this book. This book has to be lived. The question is not whether you understand Sanskrit or don't understand, or you know shlokas or not shlokas. That doesn't matter at all. What matters is how much you have applied in your life. That matters. And rest will be revealed automatically. That's how Narad Muni says. Anyway, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anybody wants to ask anything, I'll just end here. That's it. Yeah.
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the class, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, is there anybody having question? Please go ahead and ask the questions for Prabhuji.
Questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad Pranam. Thank you for the wonderful class and wonderful realizations, Prabhuji. For people like me who are grihastas, so Prabhuji, like, how do we start with this journey, being serious? I mean, on a practical side, what do we start doing in our sadhana differently that will make us serious towards the entire process? If you have to say it from your personal experience.
Well, the whole point is, I mean to say, you might be. I can presume you're already chanting 16 rounds and doing everything, isn't it?
Yes, Prabhuji. Not everything, but whatever.
Yeah, the process. But the whole point is one thing. If you have to remember, and you can advance, if you really want to advance, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Ichita Purusham Param. One thing if we can bring in a life is is always keep in mind that how Krishna will feel when you do a particular action or a particular thought. Keep this thought in mind. How Krishna is going to feel when you're going to do this. Like suppose if you are washing your hands. Now just remember, Krishna is hiding behind the trees and he's watching gopis because he wants to enjoy. So when he disappeared from Ras Leela, he was hiding behind the trees and he was watching gopis. Because why? Because he wants to enjoy. He wanted to enjoy as Rasraj, the devotion of gopis. So it's a similar situation with us. He is there in Golok, he's watching us, and he expecting from us that we will give him enjoyment. He is a person, and he expects from us. He's not a light, and we're not following a process. That if we follow this process, then we'll get love of God. It's not like that. It's not a mechanical process. Prabhupada says we need to make Krishna happy. So how to make happy? To fulfill his expectations, fulfill his desires. Isn't it? Ready to fulfill his desires. Ready to fulfill what he expects from us. He expects that in his absence, we should do things in such a way so that he becomes happy and pleased. So that point you have to keep in mind. Whatever you do, before thinking, just keep this point in your mind. How will Krishna feel if I do this? How will Krishna feel if I think like this? How will Krishna feel if I act like this? Now, to know how will he feel by a particular action. For that, you might need to have knowledge of his feelings, of his pastimes, because pastimes will help you to know how he feels when a particular devotee does something. That pastimes help you to get an insight into that, into the heart of Lord Krishna. When you understand his heart by reading the pastimes and his interaction with devotees, then when you remember how will Krishna feel when I do this, you will immediately understand if I do this, he will not feel good. Why? Because in that pastime, I read that that devotee did the same thing which I'm going to do now, and Krishna was really unhappy and he chastised him. So he will not feel good. So then we'll not do that. And if we are doing something and we think, oh, this will please Krishna, yeah, this will really, Krishna will feel very nice. Just like, just like, so if you have read in some pastime uh, that if a devotee is chanting, Krishna feels very nice and he sees, then when you're free, you will chant. It's okay, let me chant because this will make Krishna happy. So like that. So this thought, how will Krishna feel before you do anything, karmana manasa vacha, that will help you a lot to to be attentive in all your actions and to do an action for Krishna, not just for yourself. Because if you don't think how will Krishna feel, then you might be doing a right action, but that will be to make yourself, I mean to say, I will become pure. So then in the end, you are thinking about yourself. You are thinking, right, I will become pure by doing this. But then ultimately you're thinking about I. You're not thinking about Krishna. So that's a very subtle difference. Then you're not following devotional process. Then you're following a yogic process, or Gyan Yogi, Dhyani Yogi. It's not Bhakti Yogi. So that's a very crucial difference, by the way. So yeah, if in simple words, if you want one advice, I think like that. While sitting, before standing, before talking, I try to think how will Krishna feel while if I do this, and and if I think that Krishna will not feel nice, he will feel sad, then I don't do it. And if I think Krishna will feel happy, then we do with that enthusiasm. This is the whole technique. Krishna Arthya Akhila Chesta. That's Rupa Goswami says. The practical consideration is this. And then automatically everything will follow. Just remember this. How will my Lord feel? I am a servant. How will he feel? If I drink water, how will he feel? Now, well, you might say, I don't know how will he feel. But then for that, you should read pastimes of Lord. I mean to say, so I'm giving an example just of water. If I get up early in the morning, how will Krishna feel? Then you should know. If I get up late, if I miss Mangalarti, how will Krishna feel? Then you should know about that. So if I talk to such a devotee, to this devotee like this, how will he feel? The question is not right and wrong. That 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 I was talking to that devotee and I gave a right logic. That's not the question. The question is, you might be right, you might be damn 100% right. But if Krishna doesn't feel nice, uh, then it's waste. So you might give 100% right logic to your senior, and Krishna will not feel nice because you have crossed Maryada, you have crossed your yeah, Maryada means what? The boundary. How do we translate Maryada in English? Because you've crossed
Limit?
your
Limit?
yeah. Because you have crossed your adhikar. Yeah. You can put it like that. Because you have overstepped your adhikar. You're talking to senior. You can give right logic, but then that's not a good way to do things. The maryada is you should keep quiet in front of senior, even if you're right. That's respect. So Krishna will not feel nice if you're going by right and wrong logic. So when we talk to seniors, we don't just think of right and wrong. We think, okay, well, we have to respect. And then Krishna will feel nice. Even if you're right, keep quiet. You see the point? Our actions change. I'm giving an example. actions change by this simple thought, how will my Lord feel? So for that, the more you have, the more you read things, the more you read pastimes and have knowledge, and you understand who is this person, Krishna, the more you will be able to do your actions in a proper way, and it gives pleasure to him. That's why Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam. Try to understand my birth and activities, because by understanding my birth and activities, you will understand who am I, how I feel. Once you understand how I feel, then you can act accordingly in my absence. In presence of Krishna, you know, you can know directly. Krishna will tell you, don't do this, do this. But in his absence, that's what our condition is. How to know what he feels? Janma karma chemite. Try to understand his pastimes, because only by understanding his pastimes you can understand the person. You can't understand the person just like that. Am I right? So if you want to understand me, so you can't just put my photo or and just keep on seeing and you will understand me. No, you have to understand my interaction with other devotees, and then you have to see what I'm doing, how I feel, and then slowly you will get the and understanding what kind of person I am. Similarly with Krishna. So that's why Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam veti tatpatah. Anybody who understands my birth and actions, he will never take birth again, because his actions will be pure up to the point, he'll be attentive, he'll be fully absorbed in my devotions. That's how that's my advice, my suggestion.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful answers. And Prabhuji, on that note, as you said, purification, if I'm taking it as a purification point of view, we become the yogis and the gyanis. But like just taking for an example, like taking bath, many a times we wouldn't have taken bath if we were not engaged in Krishna's service many time of the day, which we wouldn't
Mm,
have done before becoming a devotee. So that purification is also for Krishna, right? If we don't become pure, how will Krishna accept us? So that point of view of getting pure is also for Krishna's acceptance, isn't it?
yeah. So that's what I'm telling. If see, there's a difference. For Gyanis think I want to become pure. But for devotees, we want to become pure to serve Krishna. That's okay. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. This is one level of thinking. But then the higher level of thinking, uh, and even higher level of thinking is, well, uh, if if my action pleases Krishna, then I'll do it. Whether I become pure or impure, it doesn't matter. That's even a higher level of thinking. So my taking bath, Krishna, I am a foolish person. I don't know whether my taking bath will make me pure or not. I don't have any knowledge. I don't know any scriptures. But simply because I've heard that if we take bath before Arati, you become pleased, I'm taking bath. You see, there's a difference of conception there. There's a higher conception. In a lower conception, you are thinking, okay, by taking bath, I'll become pure and then I'll do Arati. That's good, but that's a low conception, because there's a false ego there involved, subtle false ego, that that I know things. I know that by taking bath I'll become pure. But when you go to a higher conception, you know that you by taking bath you become pure, but your whole mood is not like that. Your mood is for Krishna. Krishna, I don't know whether whether by taking bath you become pure or not. I don't know. But because I've heard from devotees, pleases you, I'm doing this. So this is a simple example of taking bath, but when you lead your whole life, and this kind of mood is more conducive to devotion. That kind of mood, that lower kind of mood, that is mixed with jnana, gyan mishrit bhakti, because there we have our own false ego. I know things. I know by doing this I'll become pure. I know by doing this I'll become pure. I know by doing this I'll become pure. Devotees don't think like that. Devotees think, Krishna, I don't know what is purity and impurity. I have no idea. But nevertheless, I follow the rules, because I know, because you have told, follow these rules. I'm blind, I'm fool. You have told, follow those rules. I'm following. I'll follow till death. And I know it pleases you. That's all. Now you decide whether I become pure or not. You see, this is a devotional conception. So there's a little difference. between, you see all thinking matters. That's all. Otherwise, everybody's doing the same thing. You are chanting, I'm chanting, Prabhupada is chanting, everybody's chanting. Rupa Goswami is chanting, but results are different. This is thinking makes all the difference. The mood makes all the bhava makes all the difference. In the lower level of thinking, we are thinking about ourselves. I know things and I'll become pure. For Krishna service, that's okay. But there Krishna is secondary and you are Krishna comes later, you come first. I know by taking bath I become pure. And why I want to become pure? Because I have to serve Krishna. You see, Krishna comes later. But in a higher level of thinking, Krishna comes first. Well, Krishna, because you have told me to take bath, that's why I'm taking bath. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know whether it makes me pure or not. I even don't know what is purity and impurity. I'm such a fool and rascal. How can I understand anything? I'm sinful rascal. But you are telling me, I'll do it. I'll close my eyes and do it. And I know this is the best form. And I know if something is called purity, if I follow you, I'll become automatically pure. I am convinced about that. That's all. That's how we go. You see, there's a
Thank you,
change.
Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Wonderful answers. Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Okay,
Prabhuji. Oh,
who
Hare
is it?
Krishna. This is Tiffany. Thank you for the class. It was wonderful as usual. I wanted to ask you about something in the purport that you also touched on about the subtle body and how the subtle body experiences the pain of death. And I just was wondering if you could please just explain a bit more about how that whole process works and when the soul leaves the body. You don't have to go into too much detail. I don't want to make it too long.
You know what? I can't even go into too much details because I have not died yet. My whole knowledge is theoretical because I have to die to tell you the truth. And frankly, I cannot tell you the truth. I cannot tell you the real thing because I have not went through it. It's not a practical experience for me and for none of us. So it's more of a theoretical knowledge, and we can just babble like children. What happens at death and this and that. Well, we can talk according to scriptures at least. And but as far as really making an impact, what happens at that time, that I don't think so we can do because we have not gone through that whole process. I can presume uh, that the amount of scriptures, that the amount of information about death in scriptures, which makes us so fearful when we read about it. I mean to say how much fearful it would be in practical life when we face it. We can automatically presume that, uh, like if suppose if you read about a lion and how a lion attacks a person, and then that beast tears off the flesh of that person and eats the intestine and the eyeballs and the brain. It's such a nasty thing, such a fearful thing, and you don't want to. You can't even imagine going through that whole process. Now that creates fear, but then if in reality there's a lion, that fear will be very different fear. I can tell you. That will be real nasty. It will be really millions of times more than what is we read. So anyway, theoretically, I can tell you at the time of death, what scripture says that at the time of death, uh, our body will first start become cold. It will become cool because we will start losing sensations of our body, starting from the leg, starting from the feet, and we will start losing sensations of feet and waist, and then it will slowly come up. So it's almost like anesthesia. Our body will start becoming anesthetized from the lower part and start becoming cold. And at the same time, our body will start becoming hot from the head, not cold. So from down it will become cold, from top it will become very, very hot. So there'll be a feeling, so there'll be a feverish feeling. In fever, that's the whole point. Isn't fever is like that? The body, we feel cold, at the same time body is hot from inside. but nevertheless we feel cold, we shiver. That's the feeling we will get. And then we'll start losing breath. We'll start losing consciousness, first of all. Uh, we'll not be able to see things because, and I can tell you much better than other devotees because I was a doctor. I've seen patients dying in front of my eyes in ICU, and I've seen a lot of people dying in front of my eyes. And at the time of death, they can't see, they can't talk, they can't breathe, and they and our mind will be completely chaotic position, chaotic remembrance. I mean to say, I've seen many people dying who at the time of death, they're simply blabbering nonsense. They're saying, I want tomatoes, I want Campo Cola, I want mud to eat. They have no idea what they're doing. They're in delusion state. So mind will complete delusion because that experience will be the first and the last experience. You have never experienced that experience anytime in your life. So it will be very fearful. At the time of death, person starts losing urine. I mean to say, he will urinate, will pass stool because of fear, and he might also lose blood from all his holes, from mouth, from anus, and it will be a very chaotic position and a lot of fear. And Bhagavatam says 30,000 scorpions biting. That much pain. So I don't know whether a scorpion bit you in your life. I have no idea. But once one scorpion it bit me here on the back. It was very whole night I was writhing in pain. So 30,000 scorpions, you can imagine that kind of pain. And the messengers of God will come. And scriptures explain that the messengers of God have a special rod, and they will put the rod right from here, top of the head, and it will go through the spine, and then they will tie a rope to the rod and churn the whole spine, churn our brain when we die, our, our subtle spinal channels and subtle part of the brain. It'll churn it, churn it, churn it, churn it, and by the churning, the connection between the gross body and subtle body breaks. So in some traditions, it is said that subtle body and gross body are connected by a silver cord. If you read many parapsychological books, all these kind of books, they will. So if you search on internet, silver cord, you will find that. So subtle body is connected by silver cord that they break by churning. So subtle body is released from the gross body, and then they will tie that subtle body with on the neck by a noose, by rope, and then pull it out, and then take it wherever it is destined to go. And you're dead. That's all. That's the process of dying. Quite fearful, but should be, yeah, when we face it, I don't know what's going to happen. It'll be a different kind of story. This is what happens in little details.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. It's very interesting to know because exactly what you said about how what I was really curious about was how the subtle body separates from the physical body. You gave a very detailed description there, so thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. If you want to read in more details, you can so you can download from Google Garud Puran.
How do you spell it, Prabhuji?
Yeah, yeah, you can download this book, Garuda Puran, Garuda, Garuda Puran.
Oh, Garuda. Okay, yes.
Yeah, Garuda Puran. Yeah. So if you download it, that gives you in full details what happens to subtle body, gross body, how they separate, and what exactly soul feels, and how do messengers of God they feel when they're doing this. It's a very detailed process. So you can read that. You'll find it interesting.
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Prabhu, this is Sundari Gopi. Thank you for the class. Prabhuji, I had one question with regards to that same what Mataji asked. The subtle body is agitated, aggrieved when the gross body has to die. Is it not? I mean, I was thinking yesterday that it was the mind that is getting disturbed because of the attachments it has to the body.
Mind getting disturbed. You see the point? Yeah.
The
So what's the
body
question?
is
Subtle
mind.
body.
So the subtle body is mind, false ego, and intelligence, right? So the
Yeah.
mind disturbed because there are so many plans that the living entity has made for with regards to this body, you know, and so many attachments are there, and to leave that, it is very disturbing for the mind.
Yeah.
So
So
is my understanding right? Because I was thinking in that direction, and you have a different perspective. It's, I mean, that is of course proper, but was this understanding right or not?
no, but but what's my perspective?
No, no. You were presenting how that, you know, it is very difficult to die and all, and the body is disturbed. Sorry, the subtle body is aggrieved, and it is, you were explaining about the pain and the scorpions biting like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
Yeah.
so you were
Mhm.
talking from a physical pain perspective, from a
Oh, okay. I got your point. You see the point. Even mind getting disturbed. See, first you have to understand, gross body is dead or living. Tell me this. It, gross body is dead or living.
it is a dead matter.
Okay, fine. Okay, now let's come to subtle body. Subtle body is dead or living.
Uh,
Tell me this.
I not think about that part, but
Yeah. So, so mind, intelligence, ego, it's a subtle matter. It's a dead thing.
okay.
Gross body, gross matter. Subtle body is subtle matter. It's still a matter which science doesn't know what that matter looks like, but it's a matter, mind, intelligence, ego, and it's subtle. So subtle body is also dead. So the whole point is now come to soul. Soul is living or dead?
Um, Soul is living. I mean, it's
Okay,
conscious.
fine, it's conscious. So now tell me, experience is related to dead things or living things?
Two living things.
Yeah. So then who experiences?
The jiva, the soul
Soul.
experiences it.
The mind doesn't experience. The subtle body doesn't experience. The body doesn't experience. Whatever happens in the gross body, whatever happens in the subtle body, that experience soul gets. So at the time of death, the gross body feels pain. The gross body produces pain, so that the soul starts experiencing such sensations of pain. It directly goes to soul because experience is by soul. The mind, subtle body, the mind gets bewildered because the mind is like a software. Gross body is like a hardware. So the mind generally processes the information getting from the body. But at the time of death, because the body is deranged and so many wrong things are happening, the software starts getting debugged, bugs. Yeah, uh, yeah. So in computer language, the software of mine, it gets bugs. So it starts getting bewildered. It can't process information properly. So mind gets bewildered, and the experience and the soul starts experiencing a bewildered state, a frustrated state, a state lost state, because the information is not coming from mind, proper information, because mind is bewildered. So the mind is not experiencing anything. So when we say mind is bewildered, that means soul is bewildered. That's the point. Mind is simply processing erratic information. One organ is failing, this organ is failing, this organ can't process. So many wrong informations are there. Mind gets bunkered and it can't process. So software fails. So the soul is bewildered. So generally when we say mind is bewildered, that means soul is bewildered, because mind doesn't have capacity to experience anything. Mind is a dead thing. So that's how the soul experiences pain, the soul is bewildered, the soul feels lost because the system is crashing. And that happens at death. And nothing happens to the mind. Mind can't experience anything. Mind simply can't process things. Intelligence fails at that time, and false ego false ego is crushed because the body is going. So that happens at the time of death. So yeah, is your question solved? That you
No, I got your point. I have a follow up. See, when the body is dead, the pain is gone.
when the body is finished, when the body stops functioning,
Then the pain is gone.
then at that time, uh, it depends your seeing and what's actually happening. From medical point of view, the body can be dead. I mean to say, ECG can be zero, patient is not moving. The So even the brain activity, EEG, electroencephalogram, that can also be flat. But the whole point is, nobody in science, in medical science, they can decide whether the person is dead or not just by flat EEG or ECG. No, so nobody knows when really a person dies. So your question, when the body is dead, when then the soul stops feeling pain, well, it depends. External point of view, it might feel it's dead medically also, but the body in its subtle levels, it might be living, and the soul might be experiencing pain. And when that also dies, when everything dies, when the body is completely finished, then the soul's then there is no pain. Then there is no pain from the body, from the gross body. But but then the uh, but then the soul start experiencing pain from the subtle body, because messengers of death, they start churning the subtle body. Subtle body also has capacity to feel pain. Sorry, not to feel pain, but to generate pain.
Generate pain. Yes.
So subtle body can also generate pain. So this physical pain will get lost, but then the subtle body being churned, it generate pain, and that also soul starts experiencing pain like that. So after the subtle body takes the soul, then there is no gross body, and then the subtle body takes the soul to hell. So in the hell there is no gross body. You just have subtle body and soul, and they give a lot of punishment to subtle body, and then subtle body generates pain. It, it, so it's just the subtle body. Hmm?
When we say the subtle body, it is how see, because it is just generating things. It needs a body to feel a pain.
Oh no
How
no
does
no no
this?
no no no! It's not like that. That's the whole point. We are we are hardwired to think that we need gross body to generate pain. No, subtle body can also generate pain. Subtle body is also matter. You can also break the mind. You can break the mind. So just like if you take an iron rod, you can break it. So my finger, you can break it. Similarly, you can break the mind to pieces. You can also cut the intelligence, but that's very subtle. So we don't have tools to do that. But Yamduta can do that. So the subtle body is connected to this gross body through a subtle connection, and Yamduta have tools to break it. They break it with a scissor, which is a subtle scissor. Now we can't imagine how that is, but that is like that. That's all.
Oh, yes, Prabhuji, interesting. I mean, I have to take time to process it, but thank you. I mean, some points are clarified. My intelligence
No.
is not that subtle to understand it also. It is very gross. But thank you. Yeah, I mean, explains a lot of things. I will, if I have any further questions, maybe the next time I will remember and
Yeah.
ask that. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Hmm. Yeah, anybody else want to ask anything? Or nice son. No?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, you were mentioning the part of Vidur, and you mentioned that his mind merged into the universal supreme mind, and his soul merged into super soul, and then he left his body. So, what is the two questions, Prabhuji? So, what is that the soul merging into super soul? And also, if it merged and then he left his body, is there chances that he also might have felt the same pain that the souls undergoes?
No, no. By merging means when like Parikshit also it is said. Parikshit merged earth into earth element, bodily earth, the bodily air into air, uh, the bodily water into water, intelligence into intelligence. That means at that point of that time of death, this they start them they start detaching themselves from body, from mind, from intelligence, from ego. They're completely detached. Or in other words, they lose the sensations of body and the mind and the intelligence. They lose the touch with mental thoughts. They lose the touch with mental logic, intelligence logic, and they are completely disengaged from this body. That means they are in trance. In trance, and in trance, they don't feel pain because they have decontacted from subtle body and gross body. And because they can't feel pain and they are not bewildered, in trance you can remember God without any disturbance at the time of death also. And then you can directly go to spiritual. And that is why Bhagavad Thakur says, before we die, we have to reach the stage of samadhi or trance. Because if we don't reach the stage of samadhi trance, time of death we'll be bewildered, we'll feel pain, and we'll not be able to remember God. That's the point.
Okay, Prabhuji. So, like, since we are soul, anyway, we have to experience all this pain and everything. But the one of the way to stop experiencing this, like being in trance, so we don't experience all this.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. One of the
Oh,
ways
so
to
that
go into trance.
that's why so everybody are trying to go into it because to stop experiencing all this pain.
Yeah, right, right. That's why in other traditions also, everybody talks about samadhi, everybody talks about trance. Bhaktivinoda
Yes.
Thakur also talks about trance and samadhi. Mahaprabhu was also in trance. Gopis were in trance. That state has to be reached. Otherwise, we'll fail. And that stage
Oh,
can be,
okay.
and that samadhi can be reached only when we get love of God. Otherwise, we'll not be able to detach ourselves from uh, from uh, from this body and subtle body. It's impossible. So, and that's why Mahaprabhu says the target is love of God, because by love of God you will enter into trance, and before death, you see in Puranas, and you see in other even in olden days, many saints and rishis, they used to know that death is going to come. They used to sense automatically they're going to die, and they used to sit and go in trance and decontact themselves and simply focus on God. So when death used to come, because they decontacted from body and subtle body, there's no pain, no bewilderment. They're completely focused and they go back to spiritual. So that's how people used to do, and that is Bhagavatam all about. Parishit Maharaj also, before Takshak came, he went into trance. Bhagavatam, it says he merged everything into element. He went into trance. Takshak came, he simply burned his body, but Parishit was completely undisturbed and no pain. So he can simply chant the glories of Lord in his soul, and he went to spiritual. And that's very important. Or like Draupadi, Krishna came and he saved Draupadi. So if the same thing happens to us, Krishna will not come. We'll be shouting, "Hey Govinda, hey Govinda." But Krishna will come. He will not come. He came for Draupadi. Why? Because Draupadi went into trance at that point of time. When she lifted her hands, Govinda, Govinda, she was in trance. She was completely decontacted from physical body and subtle body. And she was completely focused on God. And that's why Krishna personally, literally favored her. So maybe Bhakta Prahlad, they threw him from the mountain. He was chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishna saved him. Why? If the same thing happens to us, will Krishna come and save us? We'll just fall down on the ground. We can't say. Hare Krishna, close eye, we'll just die. Absurd. Why? Because Prahlad he went into trance. So that is why all spiritual traditions talk about samadhi. Chaitanya Bhagavat talks about samadhi. Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about samadhi. And that other paths, you enter samadhi through meditation, through yogic process. Our style of entering samadhi is to love of God. There's no other way. And that's the whole point.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Actually, I also learned about the saints. They're sitting for many days before they're going to die,
Mata.
and they decide like when they're leaving the body or something like that. So in samadhi, Prabhuji, and actually the class was little bit frightening, listening to all the pain that the soul undergoes. But finally, when we know, like finally when you said that we can go to trance, when we can like Vidur didn't feel the pain, it's been little bit relaxing now. So
Okay, good.
yes, really, Prabhuji, little bit it relaxed now. We at least have a hope. Like so, you said so. The entire Bhagavatam, when we read the Bhagavatam, we may come into a stage where we know the fact. Yes, this is what we're going to feel. This much of pain is going to happen. And finally, you said when you go to trance, when you get the love of God, you don't have to experience it. So it is like you're showing a terror picture, and finally you say it's all just an imagination. Like so, like you give us a hope at the end, Prabhuji. Really, thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you for asking questions.
Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Sachinandana.
So who is this, by the way?
This is Lakshmi. Thank you, Prabhuji.
From where?
Florida.
Oh, Florida. Okay, yeah. Fine. Okay. So we're going to end up here. It's all done. Hare Krishna. Where is coordinator? Where is Mataji? Who's going to?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for your, very detailed class. So many new things that we learned, and always the goal. You at least we are able to see the goal, and then the other process we need to work on it, and all this have to be done before the next step. It is always your classes stress on the urgency of practicing Krishna consciousness in a non-duplicitous way. So thank you so much for your very, very wonderful association. And so let's all pay obeisances to Prabhuji and all the assembled devotees. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvaya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Ki jai.
Anand Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Jai.